Hey guys, it's Julian, and today I'm going to be talking to you about how I make the rolling, grooving rumble kicks I've been talking about recently. Sort of like the more 1605, Space 92, UMEK style. I've also been using these in my own tracks as well, and today I'm going to be breaking it down because a bunch of you requested a specific video talking about this. To go along with this video, I've just dropped a new sample pack called 20 Ultimate Grooving Rolling Rumble Kicks Volume 2. The link is right at the top of the description. What this is you get this pack of 20 kicks. As you can see, they're all split into the individual layers. So just like you see here, we have multiple layers to the kick. You have all these individual layers. Literally everything in the kick is split out, plus all the base layers as well, like the rumble and like the rolling bases and stuff like that. And I'll play you some of these kicks as a demo. And yeah, you can hear they're all really solid. You heard a few of these in the intro as well. So the link to that is at the top of the description. It also comes with a free bonus drum loop sample pack as well, which you can hear some of those. Plus these bonus melody loops as well, where you get the audio file plus the MIDI file. So you really get almost everything you need to make a really great techno track in the style. I just wanted to create a really solid resource for you guys to be able to create tracks and, actually kind of work with some high quality sounds, right? Like, these are really, really high quality kicks. And now you can just take them and kind of like play with them, like maybe take the click from this one, the punch from this one, and you can start kind of like putting together your own kicks this way. So yeah, this is a sample pack. I don't think anything like this exists on the market, but it's got the best kicks, I feel, for this style of techno that are available right now. Link is at the top of the description. Thank you so much. Every sale also really helps support me. And yeah, let's get into the video. So, I've got this kick. I believe this is kick 14 from the pack right here. And essentially, every single one of these kicks is going to boil down to 4 main layers. So you have your main punch, which is usually just going to be the kick. You have this click layer. You have a rolling bass. And then you have your rumble. And usually, right off the bat, you're going to want to start with just this main kick, whether it's sampling one or making one on your own. But you're going to start with that and then make the rumble underneath it. Like, start with this. This is the workflow. Because, like, let's say you try to start with this layer and then get the rumble and the roll underneath it. Like, it's just not going to be quite right. You're not really going to be able to make that main punch kick because it's not really going to be, like, open enough for you to make that. So that's why I say start with this, again, whether you're sampling a kick or if you're going to layer some together, however you're going to do it. This is just one of mine. And then get the rumble underneath that. So that now we just have this, like a very basic techno kick. But it's all there, like the main foundation of the kick is going to work. It's just like with making a track, where you would start with the kick and then move up to like your hi-hats or something like that. Same deal here. We want to start from the most basic layers and then work our way up. And so the rumble here is just made using the main kick. I'm using here this method where essentially we take that kick and then it's playing 16th notes. You can see we've got the arpeggiator on that. And then you put a really short reverb on it. I've noticed, quick tip, also turning that diffuse up really helps. Like, here's without that. And then with it. Then we distort it a bit, usually using an amp or something that's like got a lot of character to it. Then low pass it. And then it's just being sidechained to the kick. So that's a really simple way to make the rumble. But yeah, it just works a little bit better. Another thing here is that, like, kind of the fullness you get with this style of rumble. A lot of times, you can make a rumble just like this, without the 16th notes, and maybe like a little bit longer reverb. But you hear there's a certain, like, fullness that's missing. Right? Like, that you just don't quite get. Unless you do it this way, because this way we have the kick constantly going. The other way it's like, boom. Like the reverb kind of like dulls down. It's like, boom. This way the reverb just goes kind of flat like that. And so once you have the foundation of the kick set up, your rumble is sounding really good with your main kick. You know, like already this could be a track on its own. Then you're gonna go and do the click layer. So we go from this to this. And so now this is taking that same kick that we used for the main punch, but then we're turning it into just like this high-end kind of click layer on top. And that's what's going to add that kind of like to the kick. Like when you hear these tracks, you know what I'm talking about. And you know there's a difference between this and this. I mean, a lot of these other kicks have it too. And essentially, this is how you do that. It's using that same kick, but then what we're doing is we're layering it on with some distortion, and also a tiny reverb, which I'll talk about, and then we're high passing it. And this is, to me, it's just kind of a simpler way of creating like that high-end layer. Like a lot of times, you know, someone else might think to go and like, okay, let's get another sample pack kick, and we'll try to layer it perfectly with the main kick and all that kind of stuff. But really, ultimately, if you just use that main kick for this layer, it's going to work best because they're going to line up perfectly. And so what's happening is it's the main kick. Right off the bat, it's just going through the short reverb just to give it a little bit of that, like you hear it in the overall kick. Here's without that. And then with it. And we might even do a little bit less, right? Like maybe that much, but it's just that little tiny bit of reverb in there. And then I have this multi-band distortion, and what we're doing is we've got the highs, the mids, and the lows, which you don't hear much of. And you may be asking yourself, okay, so why are you going to multi-band distort this and then high pass it? Wouldn't you just make it so that the low end is where you want it to be with this? And actually, that seems like the answer. But you can see the way we're going to be distorting this, like the multi-band distortion doesn't really behave that way. So you kind of just have to do this at the end. So the way this is working is, yeah, we got the highs being distorted on their own, the mids being distorted on their own, and then the lows with no distortion. And the reason why we do this is very simple, actually, because if you notice, like, let's say I just drop this pedal on the whole thing. See, we're going to end up with that compared to... And so the reason for this is because distortion is a very finicky effect, right? It's very much based on the harmonic content that's being put into it and the level of everything being put into it and all of that. And what happens with these kicks is that a lot of times the low end is a lot louder, right? Because that's just simply what you want out of a kick. Like if you're looking at the kick on the spectrum, you want that like low end coming out of it. So what happens is then the low end is louder going into the distortion. And that's why you get that kind of poopy sound there. So instead, to avoid the poopy sound, you can just distort the highs. And now, it doesn't have that whole problem, but we can still get the highs sounding nice and crunchy like we want. So that's the idea there, and then I also did that on the mids. Now you'll notice that the highs, because it was a little finicky, I put the distortion after an EQ, and then I did another one. Sometimes you might want to do that just to make it a little bit smoother compared to that. And yeah, and then finally just the high pass at the end. And I've actually learned that the location of this high pass can make a huge difference. And I don't mean the location in the chain, I mean like literally where you're putting the filtering. Because if we go like here, now all of a sudden it's a whole different kick. And if we go there, so definitely play around with that, like where you set that in the mid-range. And yeah, and then after you have this, your main kick, your rumble, and then the click on top of it, then the last element to add here is going to be the rolling bass. And so typically with these style kicks, there's going to be two basses, right? Because you're going to have the rumble, which is really like the bass bass. Like that's the actual like deep low end. But obviously that doesn't really have that same kind of nice mid-range quality to it. So that's where this layer comes in. It's a bass that you'll notice is not actually doing much bass because it's being high pass, but it just adds that in the low end and the mid-range there. And so the secret to this sound is that it's very expressive. You need something that's not just going to be like constant 16th notes, just da 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 da, but it's going to be very like alive and in your face. And so there's two ways that we're doing that here. One with this filter LFO, which I'll show you in a moment. And two, you can see that the velocities are actually different on almost every note here. And yeah, you can hear that's creating that pattern versus if I just put all the velocities up. You don't have the same kind of pattern happening. And then that also goes into your synth sound because now inside of the MIDI here you can see I have the velocity on the filter frequency as well as the amp. So it's making the sound quieter and louder based on where the velocity is, but it's also changing the filter frequency. And so this is how you make it really expressive. You set something like that, like the velocity that you can just do one time, and then you go and map it like this to all these different things. You can even do it to like the oscillator positions. You can see that moving now. And so that's going to just create a lot more movement in the sound. Again, it's about not just having that same sidetrance bass, but having a little bit more movement and life in it. And so for the actual sound here with wavetable, we've got the sub oscillator, we have this transformations wavetable, and this dark 30. And yeah, so typically wavetable synthesis is going to be the best for these, whether you're using Serum or Massive or Anna or wavetable itself. It's just going to give you like a lot more different textures, because if you just use saw waves and square waves for this type of sound, it's gonna get boring. Like you need this, where it's like those textures are really making a big difference. And that's going into a low pass filter, which has an envelope on it, and then also have that same envelope on the oscillator positions. And the last thing here is this random note unison, which I actually noticed makes a huge difference. If I put it to classic, see, it's not quite as much movement. That random note unison just gives you a lot more movement in the sound. And then we have a low pass filter here, and this one is cutting off the highs a little bit, but you can see this has this LFO doing eighth notes. So now we have one movement going, but then you have one on top of that going, dun 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 dun. Like it's these different, because you can see on its own it's not really that tight. But then just having that happening on top of it makes a huge difference. Then I have a utility just converting this almost all the way to mono, just because the unison can make it a bit wider than you would want. I have a little bit of drum bus to give this some character. It's being sidechained to the kick. And then finally the high pass filter. Now one thing to note with this is that it can be very dangerous, because like say we don't have this high pass, see, it almost completely covers up the rumble. So what you need to do is solo your rumble and your rolling bass at the same time like this, and just move that filter back until you hear the rumble and the rolling bass separately. And you need to hear the rumble a lot. Like it shouldn't just be a little bit. It should be like there's very clearly a rumble and then the rolling bass on top of it. It shouldn't be any like cloudiness between these. Like that's perfect right there. And yeah, so if you follow these steps, you should be able to make a cake in the style. It's actually not that hard once you know what you're doing, but I think it can just take a little bit of time and a little bit of work to really get it there and really get the proper sound out of it. And you'll see there's nothing on the groove either. So that's gonna be it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe, and let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get my new 20 Ultimate Grooving Rolling Rumble Cakes Volume 2 pack. Link is right in the top of the description. If you like the cake in this video, it's got 20 cakes in the style. Again, super solid stuff. Plus, you get the free bonus drum loops. And the bonus melody loops. So it's really got everything you need to make a really solid techno track in the style. Again, I think this is the best cake resource on the market right now. Plus, you've got 20 of these. You can literally make like 5 EPs out of this and get them all released on different labels. So link is right in the top of the description. Thank you so much for supporting me. Every sale really helps keep me going. It's not that expensive, but it helps keep me up so I can keep bringing you guys new videos every single day and teaching you new stuff like this. I don't think anybody's really done a cake tutorial this in-depth about this style of cakes before. So link is at the top of the description. Thank you so much for the support, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you tomorrow with another video.